Ready to begin?
I'm very close. Let's see, John Martin,
Frank Martin.
Yeah, Frank Martin is not joining us.
Richard?
Okay, well.
Answer the question.
I don't know. I haven't heard anything from you.
Yeah. Okay, in any case, the two members of the team we have are John Temple and Tico Perez, right?
Indeed.
And yourself.
And myself. Okay.
There's Frank.
Did I hear Frank Martin's voice?
Yes, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Frank. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. This is Marcy Driscoll from Florida State.
Marcy, glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. And with me are Cheryl Beeler and Jeff James from the department.
Thank you. Nice to have you all. Well, let me say then welcome to all of you and begin by thanking Richard for doing such a good job of preparing me to chair this meeting. Let me see if I have some useful things to say here at the beginning. Although the state university system as a whole came out of this legislative session with close to the same level of funding as last year, that level of funding includes some rather large amounts of targeted funding, including medical education and expansion of the USF branch campus in Lakeland. For this reason, several of the universities will still see serious budget reductions, and all of the universities will likely have to make adjustments to their operations and instructional offerings. In order for us to respond more quickly to these budget reductions, universities may need to fast-track program approval and termination requests through their boards of trustees. Universities are requesting that the Board of Governors remain flexible over the next few months by allowing such items that must be approved at the state level to follow parallel tracks through both the university boards and the BOG, or to be taken up outside the cycle established by the board's work plans. So the question is, are academic program teams in agreement with granting this request and further recommending to the full Strategic Planning and Academic Systems Oversight Committee that it do the same? Any comments on that?
Yes, Temple, I think if we're going to do that, that's fine with me. I think whatever we approve of ought to have a subject to the Board of Trustees approval if we've approved it.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge there, and I'm not averse to parallel tracks either, I think the challenge there is it's going to put a lot more burden, I hate to say, on staff to make it clear that if something is just not acceptable, it doesn't get too far down the line where we get a Board of Trustees vote and then just 1 week or something of that nature to give a final approval. I mean, I think it's going to be important that staff be more engaged and we be more engaged throughout the process as things may change when it reaches the trustees. We would not be looking at a fait accompli until they finish it, and we could be well along the line with preconceived or notions which may have changed later. So I'm all right with it. I think it creates some efficiency, but I think it will burden staff.
But that is a legitimate caution, yes. Good point. And staff has been listening and heard that. We have good and competent staff, and I think they've gotten the message.
And they don't have enough on their plate right now, I'm sure.
I'm sure they do. All right, so I hear a yes to that, and then we will expect the staff to continue to work with their university colleagues who need to fast-track approval and termination requests over the next 6 months. Okay, now we will turn to the concern for the PhD in Nutritional Sciences at the University of Florida. The university is seeking to elevate the existing Nutritional Sciences concentration in the PhD in Food Science and Human Nutrition program to become the PhD in Nutritional Sciences. Funding will be reallocated from the Food Science and Human Nutrition program, and expenses will be minimal, as the program continues to utilize the faculty and the facilities currently used for the concentration. This program was approved by the University of Florida's Board of Trustees at its meeting in June, and originally submitted to our board then. but was withdrawn from consideration by the university before being taken up by the Board of Governors. The program has now been resubmitted for reconsideration. So let me look to the University of Florida representative to see if you have anything you can say to help us understand what you're looking for.
Good morning. This is Angel Pollak-Boland, the Associate Provost for Academic Affairs, standing in for Joe Glover. And I have with me Mark Rieger, who's the Associate Dean of Academic Programs, and he'll be able to answer any questions you have and talk with you about the proposal.
Okay, we could turn over to members of our team then, see if they have any questions. You folks have nothing to add to what we already, you from the University of Florida have nothing to add to what we have already received.
Well, the only thing, we got into the call a little bit late, so just to make sure, I suspect the Board of Governors let you know that we have complied with all of the issues that were listed in their assessment report.
Yes, the Chancellor's office has kept us pretty well informed, I think. So let me ask members of our team if there are any questions or comments.
Yeah, John Temple again.
John.
I know you put in your report how this meets workforce goals and all that kind of stuff. I still think that our criteria is so wide open that any academic program or any PhD request can just be justified on that basis. And I still say that, and this is to the Strategic Planning Committee, we need to review that all that language because it's too open. I happen to not see how this PhD in nutritional science meets a critical state concern, but it's been approved by the University of Florida Board of Trustees, and I'm not going to second guess that.
Yeah, your concern is a legitimate one, and Frank Martin is on there, so I suspect he has heard what you said.
And Frank, we talked about this before, and I don't want to let it go because, it's just too broad. I mean, it's just too broad. So at some point, I'd like to review all that language again.
Okay, certainly, I concur. I mean, the way the program is now, it is very broad, and I think we do need to tighten up a little bit.
And I have the same comment on the next issue, sports management, but I don't want to hold it. Let's go forward.
Well, then, if there are no other comments or questions, I will receive a motion to recommend the PhD in nutritional science to the full committee for its consideration. Do I hear such a motion?
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
And I'll second.
Moved and seconded. If there are any comments or questions?
Is there any response from staff or concerns from staff or Chancellor? None has been expressed to me. So,
This is Richard. I'll speak to that. With both of these programs, I'll speak first to the University of Florida's program. This is a program that they've been running as a concentration under another degree for close to 10 or 15 years or more, I think, if I remember correctly. And they've been graduating students. They have all the faculty and everything in place. We never had any real issue with the costs associated with this program because it was all reallocated costs. The issues we had originally with the proposal were more technical in nature, with getting the proper signatures and responses to some of the criteria. And they have addressed those issues and sent us a revised proposal, which is the one that you now have.
thank you. I'll call the question, Mr. Chair.
You've heard the motion before you. It's on the table. Members of the team ready for a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the PhD in Sport Management at Florida State University. Florida State is seeking to elevate the existing sport management specialization in the PhD in Physical Education program to be a PhD in Sport Management. Funding will be reallocated from a physical education program, and expenses will be minimal as the program continues to utilize the faculty and facilities currently used for the specialization. This request by FSU is also an example of the type of fast-track flexibility needed for universities to respond to current budget reductions. Due to a need to shorten the timeline for implementation, FSU has asked that the Board of Governors consider a parallel approval process for this program. The program is submitted for review to the Academic Subcommittee of the FSU Board of Trustees in May of 2009, and will be considered for approval by the FSU Board at its June upcoming meeting in June. So now I would like to recognize the FSU representative to say anything they would like to about this proposed program and why it's important to fast-track its approval. Who am I looking to?
Marcy Driscoll. I'm Dean of the College of Education at FSU. And with me are the department chair and program representatives, Cheryl Beeler and Jeff James, who can answer any questions I think that I might screw up. Our interest is the timing is important for us, partly because we initiated approximately a year ago a restructuring in the college to create a School of Teacher Education, where we're bringing together all of our teacher education programs. The physical education program is a teacher ed focused program, but the sport management concentration within it is not. The two programs have really operated independently pretty much from the beginning when the sport management program was created more than 10 years ago. And so at this point, it is a separate field from physical education. It prepares different sorts of folks, doesn't have the same kinds of concentrations. So we're looking to separate the sport management concentration from PE. We would then move PE into the teacher education unit where it better fits and leave sport management as an independent program.
Mr. Chair, it's Tico. I don't know that I understand the urgency of seeking our approval before their trustees approve from that explanation. Perhaps there's more, but I don't get the urgency and timeline.
Can you comment on that, Dean Driscoll?
Yes, I have spoken with members of the administration this morning who've indicated that the Board of Trustees has been reviewing the proposal and will approve it at their June 17th meeting. That's the next time that they will meet after our having submitted all of our paperwork. Eric Walker, I understand, who's the chair of the Faculty Senate, has already signed approval for the proposal.
So the problem is that your trustee meeting is against our BOG meeting, and if you approve it at your June 17th meeting, we won't get to it until July or August?
Right.
That troubles you, does it, Tico?
Well, yeah, the trouble for me, and again, I don't have any problem with the program. Procedurally, it does trouble me that we would approve a program before the trustees approve a program. We rely on the trustees to do the math to make certain that all the budget transfers are proper, that the budgets and the numbers that we're looking at have been scrubbed. I mean, we rely on the boards of trustees to make these decisions, and then we chime in if we think there's a problem with their decision making. It just seems counterintuitive to reverse that order. For us to make an approval, move it to the Strategic Planning Committee who'll make an approval, and then we could possibly approve the program at the board meeting before the FSU board approves the program. So procedurally it gives me an issue. If there is some urgency, I can certainly live with it, but I think it's bad practice. I just think it's bad practice.
So to paraphrase, while this is a formality, it's one that concerns you, and you think we're setting bad precedent by doing these things in the reverse order. I take it that what you would prefer would be to have the Board of Trustees take their action first, and then for the Board of Governors to act on it at our next meeting in July or August or whenever it is. Is that right?
Procedurally, yeah. I mean, I don't want to hamstring the university, though. I mean, I certainly, when you talk of precedent, I mean, I don't think that it is precedentially binding if we do this today that we're going to always do this in the future. These are difficult times, and timings are challenging. I guess I don't understand if we started looking at this a year ago as FSU and reorganizing programs, as the dean said, how it comes up to 2 meetings on the exact same day for the final approval, or we can't get this thing done. So it troubles me process-wise. I'd love to hear from staff on this as well. Again, I have no problem with the degree. I'm prepared to vote for it today. I'm troubled with the process.
Dr. Marshall, this is Richard. If you'd like me to respond, I'll give that a shot.
Yes, Richard, please do.
Okay. We had spoken with the FSU staff on this particular program, and we also had the same concerns that Governor Perez had, and we've been trying to work closely with the university to run what is essentially a parallel approval process. I agree that it's not a good precedent to set. The rationale that the university gave to me, which I felt they would speak to today, was one really of needing to reorganize their schools and some of their departments to be in a good position to respond to budget cuts, and that's why I had agreed to bring it to your attention and see if it would be okay to put on this agenda. I had the same concerns that Governor Perez does with regard to this running parallel. We're going to have to work closely with the FSU folks to be able to pull this off. And the fact that the Board of Trustees meeting and the Board of Governors meetings are on the same day are also troubling. But I would also like to advise the members of the team that the way the FSU Board of Trustees works on these issues is they have an academic review team, very much like this one, that really reviews the proposals and makes a decision on them in advance of the Board of Trustees meeting. And then such items, it's my understanding, then go on the Board of Trustees consent agenda. And unless there's a real issue at that point, it's pretty much an accomplished thing. And I would ask the university to speak back to that, because this is really a favor to them to be able to move this along this path this way.
In answer to that, that was the information that I had this morning from the administration, that subcommittee of the Board of Trustees, some members had already approved it and signed, and the others would do so as early as today, but no later than Friday.
So you, Dean Driscoll, are giving us your own personal certification that the Board of Trustees is going to act favorably on this. In fact, I guess you would say that...
Don't put her there, Mr. Chair. That's not fair.
I'm sorry, say that again?
That's not fair. Don't make her say that.
Well, I think that's what she's saying, that they're giving us their word that it's been approved, in fact. Marcy, is that unreasonable?
That's the information that I had from the administration this morning. Who spoke with Provost Abel while he was at the dentist, actually, this morning.
Yeah.
So.
Was I think gas, or was he?
Governor Marshall, this is Governor Martin. In terms of process, now, are we saying that certain members of the team have approved this request and others haven't? Do they meet to discuss this, or is it one-on-one? I'm not quite sure I understood that internal approval process.
No, the members of our team have not approved anything. We're discussing it now.
No, the members of the FSU Board of Trustees.
The Board of Trustees, yeah.
Yes. Because it sounded like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like some members of that committee have approved it and others have not. And I'm just kind of curious as to what that statement really meant.
Dean Driscoll, any comment on that?
My understanding only was that the committee had approved it and that they were in the process of acquiring the signatures. That some members had signed the document and others have not yet signed it, but had verbally approved it. But I don't know their process, so I'm only reporting to you what was told to me this morning.
Mr. Chair, my first response is I have no qualms about getting on the phone again in a week. I am troubled if we're going to approve something that hasn't even yet been finally approved by the reviewing committee by the Board of Trustees, nonetheless the Board of Trustees. This is not a parallel process. We're leading this process, and that is a little troubling for me for procedure. Again, I'm prepared to vote yes for the degree. That's not the issue. And I'm also prepared to get on the phone in a week and do this all over again once we at least get some notice from the reviewing committee that they have formally adopted this issue. But I've got to give some discomfort to process.
Governor Marshall?
Yes, who's speaking, please?
Well,
this is Ann Blankenship.
Yes, Ann.
If I may, let me give you a little bit more information regarding the approval of the academic subcommittee. We've got the majority of the members have approved. They wanted to get the faculty members approval first before they gave their final approval. We should have that by no later than Friday. But we've gotten the verbal approval through so far. It just needs to, they wanted to get that one faculty members in advance, which they have gotten. So, by Friday they will have had, and it may be as early as today, it will be completely approved. Our board meeting is June 17th, and the full Board of Trustees approval will be done on the 17th of June.
And this is Richard. If I can just make one comment, Dr. Marshall. This academic review program teams can recommend this forward contingent upon approval, and we can pull it from the agenda of the full committee if we don't get the paperwork that we expect to see. So
when is the strategic plan? When is your committee?
It will be
Frank?
This is Mikey. Our board meeting is scheduled for June the 17th and 18th. So we are meeting on the same days as the FSU's Board of Trustees.
If they're going to do it on the 17th, why don't we just defer this until the 18th when we have our board meeting?
Okay.
Is that from John Temple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the calendar.
In other words, you're saying that our team could meet again after we received word from the FSU group, and before we forwarded to Frank Martin's committee. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I concur with that. I just think we're walking down a little slippery slope here, and I'm still a little bit concerned in terms of the internal processes to get this approval to us. And I think FSU need to get the official approval from their committee and before it comes to us.
Okay, I think this is clear now. Tico raised a question not because he has any opposition, any concern for the program itself, but a procedural matter having to do with the timing of the recommendation from the FSU Board of Governors. So what John Temple has recommended is that we defer this until the Board of Governors meets on June 17th.
18th.
18th, okay, yeah. And then
their approval.
We will have had the approval by the FSU Board of Trustees before we are asked to consider it and advance our recommendation to Frank Martin and his committee. I think I have the authority as chair to take that action and not call for a vote on this matter if that's the wishes of the group. And I'm going to do that unless there's some concern expressed. Do I hear any comments on that?
Mr. Chair, let me just ask the Dean, with all due respect, if we meet this timeline procedure that we're talking about, which would be approving it within 24 hours of your Board of Trustees approving it on the 17th, does that in any way impact, harm, slow down, impair your process?
It would probably slow us down a little bit, but that's still within, I believe, the window of what it will take for us to do the things that we're being asked to do regarding the budget.
Okay.
Okay, Okay, I interpret that answer then, Dean Driscoll, as saying you could, you folks, including the Provost's office there, could accept this modification of procedures with comfort. Is that accurate?
It's accurate for me. I won't speak for the Provost's office.
Dr. Marshall, that is fine. This is the relationship.
Then the chair declares this matter resolved. We're going to handle it as we've just described. And Richard, you have that all clear in your procedures, your minutes?
Yes, sir. And as soon as we have a better idea of the timeline for FSU, we'll advise the team members of when we can pull back together. And it may be that we can do this actually the Wednesday of the I think Wednesday is the 17th of the board meeting very quickly on this one issue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and for the record, as long as their committee has reviewed it and it's on the consent agenda from the trustees, I'm not averse to moving on that Wednesday if that's something that we need to do. I'm just uncomfortable with where we are today.
Okay.
Great. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, I think we've resolved that one. Let's go on to the next item, the PhD in Sport Management, Florida State. Wait a minute.
Oh, that was it.
Let's move on to number 5. Request for exemption from 120 credit hours, to the degree, for the Bachelor of Music in Music Education at the University of West Florida. The University of West Florida is requesting approval for the Bachelor of Music Education to be 134 credit hours to degree in order to meet the requirements for professional teaching certificate eligibility and accreditation. All currently existing bachelor's in music education programs in the State University system are approved for 134 credit hours to a degree. So it's clear what the University of West Florida is asking for. Seems to me to be a simple and straightforward matter. Are there any comments or questions?
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I've heard 2 aye votes. Any negatives? Also say aye. It's been approved. We'll go on to the next item. The administrative split of research and professional doctorates for IPEDS reporting. And here I am recognizing Richard Stevens to explain what we're talking about.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. This is really a fairly technical change to our academic program inventory. We had, as some may be aware, the universities have to report to the National Center for Educational Statistics in their what they call the IPEDS database, their degree completions, their enrollments, and other things for each degree program. And this is required in order for them to remain eligible for federal financial aid. Back a couple of years ago, the National Center for Educational Statistics decided to pull together a technical review panel to take a look at the categories that they had universities reporting their doctorates in. And that time, and still in place, there are 2 categories which you normally see. One is the professional category, which typically includes law, medicine, veterinary medicine, dentistry, etc. And then there was the doctorate program, which tended to cover a whole range of different types of programs, both research and some that were more occupational, professional oriented. Over the years, we've all seen a number of programs that have begun to move towards the doctorate level for professional licensing. This has happened with physical therapy, and we see the movement with audiology and pharmacy and things like that. And they were all wanting to become start reporting as under the professional category, and it started to raise questions at the national level about how to reorganize the categories. So there was a group that came together and discussed this, and the decision was made by the National Center for Educational Statistics that they would revise the categories to basically include 3 categories of doctorates. One would be a category that identified research doctorates, your typical PhD, and others that include a dissertation, and prepare researchers for both the private sector and universities, and those that were more professionally oriented. And that would include your former professional degrees such as medicine, law, etc., but would also begin to pick up a lot of the newer degrees that were emerging at the doctorate level that had either a professional requirement or were primarily designed for individuals in the workforce who needed to move on to the doctorate level and the type of advanced education that is associated with that level. So in order to be able to report this fall, we need to basically reorganize our academic program inventory to align with these new categories that the universities will have to report in. The issue that we run into is that in some cases, universities, as we have seen, have been running tracks underneath a program that was approved. And this happens all the time. That in some cases the track was more professionally oriented, and that there was both a research component and then a professional component operating underneath that particular degree program. So it kind of left everybody scratching their heads as to which way to go with that, whether they were going to call it professional or whether they were going to call it research. And we're asking the team and eventually the board, I guess, to allow us to make a one-time administrative change to align the inventory for reporting purposes, and in those cases where it makes sense to allow universities to split out their concentrations into a separate degree on the inventory, that we be allowed to do that without them coming through the proposal process. And in this case, we're talking about programs that are running as a track under an existing program. We're not talking about adding new resources or anything like that. It's primarily a data collection effort. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions related to that.
Well stated, Richard. Do any members of the team have questions for Richard or comments? Then I will ask for a motion to make the changes that Richard has just recommended in the academic program degrees inventory and authorize him to proceed with those changes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Comments, questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. It's opposed, the same sign. It's approved, and thank you. Well, I have no further comments, and as far as I'm concerned, we're ready to adjourn, but I would like to say thanks to the team members, Temple and Perez, and also to Governor Martin for his joining us this morning. He's the chair of the parent committee, and that's important that they be informed as to what the team is doing. Any further comments or questions? If not, the meeting is adjourned, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.